Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EU FNCS preview. We have Coach Harry in the building. We're going to be talking about Groups 2 and Group 3 of EU, giving you the rundown on what we think is going to happen, who to look out for, who's going to do well, and some fantasy stuff as well, because we got some Fortnite fantasy to discuss. But, Harry, first of all, how you doing? How you feeling going into the weekend?
Doing good. Looking forward to this weekend. I think there's going to be a lot of exciting games, even though everyone's talking about Group 3, Group 2 also another exciting group. I mean, I'm just looking forward to getting 10 more stacked games, 20 more people making grands, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
It should
should
be
be a
good.
good one. Should be a good one. We have, two very interesting groups, two more interesting groups than, the original sort of group one
Yeah.
that we ended up having to watch. We'll start with Group 2 and we'll save Group 3, the juicy one, for last. Let's take a look at the map, right? Because when you look at the map for Group 2, you instantly can see there's some big names here, people who you expect to do well. People you expect to see in grants, but there's some interesting narratives. I think is the key thing here, right? We have some interesting off spawns, some teams who will have like a big impact on the grand finals if they qualify, even if they're not like necessarily the best team. And so when you look at this, what jumps out to mind for you straight away?
I mean, it's kind of like the story of this group for me. It's all about the top teams and being uncontested, right? And how easily they are going to be making it through. I think when you look at the map and you look at teams like Janus Nurch and Chap, you think about Queasy Swizzy Mustache, you even think of teams like Akira Polsize, X Squeeze, Pink Nebs Chino. There's no real big obstacles they have to get over, right? It's not like you're seeing a lot of these top teams being contested, because that was a lot of the storyline for a lot of these teams going through. Pink and Nebs and Chino being contested at Dojo all the weeks. Akira Polsize, X Squeeze, obviously the Cami situation, Jazz, Noah, and Chap with the Reason situation as well, and Queasy, I mean, with the French trio. All of these teams have been contested throughout all of the divisional weeks, and it feels like them just being split up going into heats just either means that they're going to qualify with ease and it's going to be completely free, or, for example, like someone like Vanya, Pixie, and Marius, they don't have the experience being uncontested, right? And I think that's something we did see, that teams who have been uncontested the whole season have been practicing contested the whole season. When it gets to when you're uncontested and it's even more stacked in division finals, you don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was obviously a big problem for Vanya, like you mentioned. It's interesting because when I look at these teams, like the ones you highlighted, I don't think it will be a problem for any of them, the lack of experience being con. In the case of Janice, Noah, and Chap, I think Janice, Noah, when they were playing with Reason, had some tournaments where they were uncon, so you'd think their experience there. Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache are going to be good regardless.
Yeah.
Akira, Podesa, and Xwiz is a weird one because when they've been cons, they've been losing. So they've just not even gotten to play.
Yeah, they haven't got any practice.
Yeah, I think they'll just be happy to play. So maybe it affects them, right? Because not even just from the perspective of not knowing how to be uncon, just not getting a chance to actually play the game from their spot, might be beneficial. In the case of Pink, Nebs, and Chino, from like the conversations I've had with Pink about their season, I think he will be happy to be uncon finally. Just because of how things have gone. In terms of then even just like the actual like teams who are conned, right? Because we do have some like interesting off-spawn battles here. The first one I'm looking at is Pound Plant. Or Pump Power. Is it Pump Plant or Pump Power?
Pump Power.
Pump Power. Bloody, bloody names this season. Demus, Pix, and Dom versus Karama, Werex, and Mez. This is interesting because Demus, Pix, and Dom, obviously, up and coming Polish trio. Demus and Pix obviously were an up and coming duo that you highlighted on like Defentation podcast last year as being a team to watch out for, a team on the rise. And they started off the season really hot. They've been impressive this season, and I think they've contested these guys before. They've been contested off spawn, and they did really well. They bossed the team off spawn. So, you'd expect them to feel confident going into an off spawn here at Pumped.
No, for sure. I mean, I think the main benefit they have right now, and we'll talk about in Group 3, is the fact that Boxcars is conned. We'll get into it, but from watching that eval, Pump Power was conned in that eval finals, and obviously Thomas was on con on Boxcars. They were getting 1 to 2 kills out the air every game on Pump Power. It was just Thomas just spraying everyone out the air. So having a fair 3v3 where, yes, there are teams near you who could third party, but it's a lot harder than something like a Boxcars, right? So it just comes down to the straight 3v3 power. And as you mentioned, right, Demas, Pix, and Dam are an insanely strong team at Pump Out, which we don't really talk about when it comes to Polish teams, right? Whether they're good or spot or not. But I think they're extremely strong, and I think especially with them winning a divisional finals this week, I'd be surprised if they had too many worries. But in this format, if you have two bad games, you're already looking at you need to win a game. Like, yes, obviously Ziandi, Jew, and Shark managed to qualify. They won a game, but they would have won if they second that game anyway. But they had an insane match history at the end. I think it was like 5th, 2nd. I can't remember the other game. It might have been like a 4th as well, right? And you have that insane end of the tournament. But it's like you DAR spawn twice, and even if you win 3-2, you're still in a situation where it's not comfortable. You're going to have insane games, which I know Demas, Pix, and Dom can do, but it's under the pressure. Especially this is their first FNCS coming into it, being a strong team, right? As you said, talked about them last year. That was after FNCS was done. This is the first time they're coming in as not a favorite, but someone people know. So I think that's definitely exciting for me. Who else you've got your eyes out on for this group as well, if you're looking at it?
Well, I think in terms of like off-spawn battles, right, what happens at Night Shift will be very interesting, right? You have Volko for Strokey and Kido versus Andalek, Sato, and Marco. Two teams who I think Uncon you would say are good enough to make grand finals. The off-spawn fights at Night Shift can be weird, right? Because like you sort of have situations where it's quite easy for a team to swerve into the forest, loot up, and then like go and then fight each other. And the problem with that is that the longer like those fights take, the more likely they're gonna have the Bird team in Cringe or the Northern Twinkle team and Nathan come in and try and third party and get involved there. And you just end up with these like really scuffed games where you're just like fighting to get back in the game. I think one of those teams, I'm not sure if they've been landing anywhere else, but like that's one of those things where depending on how the first 2 games go, someone probably just leaves to where one of the game winners is. Depending on what sport it is, because I feel like that's a tough place to fight in this type of lobby specifically.
Andalek, Sato, and Marco are a Twinkle team, right? So it's like they've gone from willing to contest Nathan Seasby and Eclipse and instead want to contest Night Shift and contest, which is, as you said, nowhere near as an easy off spawn. Twinkle, yes, you're within small buildings, you have to land your own buildings, but it's a quick fight. You're within a small parameter. The fights happen quite quickly. In Night Shift, as you said, you can swerve miles away, get 30 chests easily without even having to fight them. But 30 chests in the finals without metal isn't enough. You're not going to be stacked enough. And I know we'll touch on it, the fishing rod meta, and obviously just fishing as much as you need to for heals. But not having masks and not having guaranteed mobility isn't going to make it so that you can win a game, or you're not going to be able to be consistent enough. So yeah, for sure. I think that's going to be a little bit grief as well. I think when it comes to like the other off spawns, I think Flooded Frogs is obviously an interesting one. Not really the teams we'd expect to be at Flooded Frogs, maybe. But I think Noms, Rizzo, and Gripey did land there in the play-in stage. They changed they had been landing Mass Meadows the whole season. And then they changed this week in play-ins to go there. And they came 8th or 7th, I think, in play-ins. So it's interesting how they'll do.
I think when watching Veno, I think there were a couple games where they were fighting those guys or spawn during the play-in. So, and if I remember, like, I think they're pretty all right off spawn, to be fair. The interesting thing with Flooded, right, is that similar to almost to Night Shift, like the fights there are obviously a lot quicker than Night Shift, but if you have a team landing in the metal split south, like if the fight does drag on even a little bit, like that team's going to give you some problems potentially. So, they can loot up pretty quickly. I think we saw on EU, right, in group 1, it was like supposed to be Cond, and then, like Teeny and them like left because they lost that first game. It'd be interesting to see if like, I don't know much about the other team that's standing there, Shmali, Mimu, and Neofini. I'd be interested to see like if they leave or if they commit to fighting it. I think in general with like off-spawn fighting in this, it's like you sort of have 2 games to give it a shot. Because I think you can qual off consistency with 3 really good games.
Yeah, like, you have to have really good games,
Yeah, so but like after like you done 2 games, you're sort of in trouble. So you sort of get like 2 chances there, and then you're putting a lot of pressure for the rest of your tournament. But at least there's a chance still.
No, for sure. I mean, Yeah, I mean, there's still other. I think this is the best heat the French teams could have really asked for, to be honest, right? If you're looking
Right.
at it, like Akira, actually, we touched on Akira Podosai at X-Squeeze, uncontested Lost Lake in a set lobby. Every team that's kind of landed there uncontested has had a good set lobby performance.
Yep.
And I was just looking at the map, and you see Floki, Clement, and Sloxe, and you just see
Uncon Mosses.
uncon Mosses with boxcars conned, with pump power conned, with flooded frogs conned. And
Yeah.
in a landing spot like that, where we've seen obviously nowhere near as OP without the water perk, but we saw in the early weeks of Vino how they were playing, how aggressive they could play from Mosses. It's like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them towards the top of the leaderboard as well.
So the interesting thing about that, right, is that so as of the time we're recording this, they just became uncon like an hour and a half ago. So initially they were going to be getting conned by Brownie, who's landing at Canyon. They've moved to Canyon, so like now Floki and them have an uncon, and like you said, the situation uncon just looks amazing. Like it's like in a really great spot. Even conned against those guys, you know, they were having to fight bloody Venom and that off spawn.
They went 3-3 with them.
Yeah, so they would happily take fighting Brownie and those guys off spawn. You know, the French support as well on those guys, you know, would have maybe been able to sway some minds more than it would with a Flick Vico and them lot. But yeah, they're in a really good spot. I think in Group 1 we saw Robin and them land Mosses and they qualified through from that spot. So again, it's still a strong spot as much as like we had the lobby boss teams leaving it. Being able to have Mosses on con, I think, is a really good position to be in.
No, for sure. I mean, we're talking, as you said, about Robin. They were playing aggressive from there. They were getting 10 plus kills every game from there, kind of being the lobby bosses. So I'd be interested to see how Floki, Clement, and Socks they do from there.
I think again, if we start to look at like some other teams, maybe let's go a bit in depth then on some of these teams, right? Because I think, you know, when we look at it, I think it's clear to identify like who the good teams are, and like we said, a lot of those teams are uncon. Is there anyone that you think isn't a clear like game winner, someone that fits more in consistency? Because I think with a lot of these guys, you'd maybe say like, you know, Queasy, Swizzy, Mustache, you could probably see them winning the game. I think there'll be a lot of people that could probably see Noah Riley and them winning the game, maybe Pink winning the game. Like where do you think people fall into that category? Is there anyone that might be a surprise that you don't think is a clear game winner, but you still would expect to qual? I can see Lush and the Frizzy and Starkers winning the game as a surprise, maybe, right? Like, you know, Frizzy's always been sort of like a game winner in the past. So, like, yeah, who do you sort of got in those categories?
I mean, I've got about the UK boys. You know, I've got about Nathan CZV and Eclipse. But it's funny you say a surprise. What other team that would have gone fifth last FNCS Grand Finals into obviously globals, into then obviously Eclipse, who made all 3 grands last year? Who else would go, oh, that's a surprise if they qualify to grands or win a game? But no one ever talks about them, ever.
Right.
There's never a conversation where they're like, oh, they're in the conversation for that they might be able to win a game or even do well in grands. There's just never this type of conversation, and it just always feels like the sort of situation is that they're just another tier 2 team in EU, which just qualify to grand finals, and that's about it. But they are a top team, and they can get those type of performances. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them winning games, you know. Nathan has been a player who plays towards height consistently, especially since he's been playing with CZB, right? And obviously, controller IGL, it's a different dynamic than what most people are probably used to. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them on height multiple games. And for me, that's what I'm keeping my eye on. For another team, if I was going to say anyone, I'd probably say Strapped, Hellfire, and Skrill. You know, I think I think Kappa on con. I think, to be honest, I hope what they do is they learn from obviously Danish as well. Maybe speak to Maris about the spot. I'm interested to see if they learn from the mistakes of uncontested Kappa in Group 1. I think this spot is way too good to have the performances it's been having. I think it's a spot that has everything you need: God loot, consistent mobility, metal, access to surge around you, have access to ref's guard split, you have access to shatter span, you have access to hopeful heights, you have access to a lot of these spots early if you want to make it early. But there's just seems like there's something missing unless you're contested there and you loot less, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see them win a game. Who have you got your eye on as like a underdog going into this heat?
I don't know how I think they're gonna do, but a team I'm definitely supporting is Alba's team.
Yeah.
Alba, obviously Italian woman Fortnite player who, you know, has been doing incredibly well over the past year and a bit. She's, you know, gained a lot of respect from like a lot of top pros, where whenever I speak to a lot of top pros and like Alba's mentioned, instantly it's like, yeah, no, she's actually really good. She's good. Like whenever there's been like co-ed tournaments, right? You know, and I'll ask like a pro, a lot of them will go, yeah, like, yeah, I want to play with Alba or someone like that because she is just doing really well. And they're landing Foxy Floodgate uncontested. We obviously just watched Tayson and Trulix and them qualify from that spot on consistency. If she was to qualify, she would be the first woman to qualify for a grand final of FNPS.
That'd be so sick.
It'd be monumental. Like it would be such a hype moment and such a really cool story. So I'm rooting for them. Like I'd love to see them do it. If they did it with a game win, obviously consistency would be cool because they did it. But if like she wins a game,
that would be so sick.
It would be mental. So that's one thing I'm really excited about.
Is it better if she gets if they get a game win? Because I was thinking about it then, it's like a game win. You know, obviously people would talk about the Reaper, but like if they call off consistency, right? It's like, well, they just bossed it. You know, they got a grand final, they got a finals lobby. They were one of the best teams consistently over the games. Like that would show even more respect. Obviously, winning a game is both ways are the same, right? But I think they can do it. You know, uncontested Foxy Floodgate, which we know is an insane spot in a set lobby where you just have two impactful, hugely impactful power positions you can play from, and you know they're in a really, really good spot, and hopefully they don't get surprise conned. You know, there's a lot. Obviously, when you get these type of mats, people still do the surprise conning. They still do the oh, we're triple conning Warriors Watch. No one is triple conning Warriors. Yeah, no one is ever triple conning Warriors Watch. Some of you are dipping to another spot, but hopefully, like they have a good showing this weekend because it'll be monumental, as you said. It would be a huge step in the right direction. It would be incredible to see.
Yeah, uncontested Foxy, great power positions in terms of hills, access to water for fishing and whatnot. Like you just have a really good, you know, position on the map. We haven't talked too much about them. How do you feel about Queasy, Swizzy, Mustache? Of course, they're the favorites, biggest name in the heat, and you'd probably expect them to win. But is it going to be a one and done? They win the first game, or are they going to be here all 5 games with us? You reckon?
I think they'll be here a few. I don't think they're making all 5, but I think they'll be here a few. I don't think. I think obviously it kind of depends on obviously zones. You know, if you get a zone like game 1 of Group 1, you know, where it's just a seaport zone. I mean, they're winning game 1. I don't think there's a question about it. They play hugely aggressively for early height. They're one of the best teams to play for early height. If you watch any of their games, right, they will be looking for it. So I would expect nothing different in these finals. However, is early height the way to play? Depends how stacked you are and going to endgame, which then comes to mid game and how your surge is and how your surge preparation is. And it's again another team we talked about. When you play contested a lot of the time, well, you have some problems now. You're uncontested. Queasy and Swizzy and Mustache, they're too experienced for me to say they're going to have a problem. You know, I think they're going to be fully prepared enough. You're not flying to Germany to not be prepared if you're uncontested, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think they'll be here. I think maximum 3 games they'll be here, but they are definitely winning the game. I would be shocked if they didn't.
The one thing I'd be really curious to watch for these guys in terms of how they play, and it's kind of why I don't want them to be a one and done, is not only have they been playing for early height, but like on a lot of zone pools, if you watch them, like they are playing for island as well, and not just on like the zone pools that are like obvious, right? Because there's a couple island pools you can get, you know, in that area near Seaport, but you know, they've been playing really aggressively to sort of just play on almost any pool. And I don't think you realistically can, especially in grands, right? But in this lobby, I'd be curious to see just like how crazy they get with it. And if we see them on the island, like near enough every game. The problem though is if they are on island, one of those games and you get the right pools, they probably just win that game, right?
Yeah, it's just a guaranteed win.
Too easy, yeah. Like the thing about this trio, and I 100% get what you're saying about early height because it's true. And we've watched some games where, like, you know, in this type of lobby, playing early height doesn't necessarily guarantee the win. But if you're Queasy and you have 4.5k mats and you play for height, 8th zone, you have won the game.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, like it's simply put like that.
I mean, you talked about it, right? We're saying, like, what's the recipe for them to get to it? It's early height 4.5k mats, and you touched on it there. every game we watched of Group 1, the team with Ireland was the most stacked going into endgame. You get 1 to 2 zones of insane surge and free refarm, and no like worries about heals. There is no other position like it. It's so funny how the season kind of planned out. It's like start of the season, New Ireland, no one's really not feeling it, not feeling
it. Forget it.
And then we get into heats, and it's every single game. The most stacked team is the team that was on Ireland. And obviously they are. They don't have to build for 2 zones and get infinite surge and maybe even get 50-50 on there, right? It's obvious. And an invis coin on top of it, on the icing on the cake. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how the island develops if it turns into a situation like if we're going back to like, chapter 4, no, not chapter 4, chapter 5 island, where it was like, chapter 4 island, where multiple teams was going on it, right? Where you had the reboot on it, and there's multiple teams, team on the side, team on the house, team on the other side. I wonder if we get back to that, because I feel like teams can do that if you have triple mask.
Do you know what type of island I think we're gonna have? At least if I'm comparing it to the past, I think it's gonna be like the chapter 4 season 1, where you had like Malabuka and Thomas were constantly going for it, but then you had 1 or 2 other teams who would constantly go for it. I feel like it's going to be similar in that, like, I think we're going to have Queasy, at least when it comes to like grand finals or major 1 finals is the official name for it now. You're going to have Queasy and Veno's teams like going for a bunch. And of course, it will depend on like certain zone pools and which ones it has. Like there's certain like island pools that Veno can't go for. Like they literally just can't go for it, right? But for the most part, I feel like it's going to be those 2 teams fighting. It's been interesting because this team might not even make grands, funnily enough, right? But like Teeny, or at least before he started playing with Harris and Skivvy, like in a lot of tournaments that I'd VOD review of Veno, they'd go up for height and it was like always that team. Like they must have fought Teeny for the island like on 7 different occasions that I've watched, which is like crazy when you think about like the games being played. And like that is always such a fun thing to follow because you just know it's the other team there.
Know who you're fighting, it's the same guys,
right? Like
they had it in OG season as well. Like they were fighting height. I remember the game in OG season where it's Cash Cup, it was Teeny, Chicho, and Chap, and they were fighting height for the Cash Cup win against them. And it's the same. It was the same at the start of this season as well, right? I wanted to quickly touch on we talked about it on the podcast. Upsets, they're gonna happen. It doesn't. Do you think there is an upset that happens in this group?
Oh, it's tough. It is tough. I don't know. I don't want to like stick my neck out on this one, especially because this is like my guy here. But I have a weird vibe around Pink Nebs and Chino right now.
Oh, yeah, actually, Pink is watching this and he's clipping it up and he's gonna send it to you.
I know, but
you're just like, a hater.
I'm not a hater because when I've watched them a bit this season, and they've been good when I watched them. Like I think Nebs and Chino like both have like great potential. I think Pink, at least from when I've spoken to him, I think he feels really comfortable around this season. Again, it's just like the potential of them being uncon and like how that goes for them. I think they would prefer to be uncon, but I also don't know how much experience they have being uncon, and so I don't know how much that affects them in this lobby. I don't know. I just have a bad vibe. I hope my bad vibe. My bad vibe is just completely off. But I can see a world where we're like going into the last game and like they need a good game to qual.
What, they're like 12th, 13th going into last. Right? Like they need a good game.
Right. That's the sort of like vibe I'm getting. But hopefully they just get a win and like shut me up straight away. Do you have any bad vibes?
I've got one.
Like that? Okay.
I've got one, and it's at Mass Meadows. And it is Janice, Noah, and Chap. Now, you were saying that whilst we were talking, it made me think about when you said like they had some finals uncon with reason. I was like, yeah, they did. They were dying to surge every game. Every game I watched, they were below surge whenever they were playing. Now, this is month back, obviously, months. So it's like earlier back, right? But I feel like they've been struggling when I've watched them. Every time I've watched them for surge, I feel like they're either slow or spawn because like obviously a lot of the mass meadow teams like to get the maze, but obviously when you get the maze, you are much slower off spawn, so you have less options, you get less power positions. And then on top of that, it's not an easy area around you to get surge. No one's contested around you. There's not like a guaranteed hopeful heights where they're probably going to split with the turtle, it's just one team there. It's just Ref's guard split is the only split which is contested, and at the end of the day, it's by two teams who are probably, maybe they will split with Stormy Killed and Clapsy and Splick, Tricks and Karma. They're two teams who probably haven't landed there too much. And maybe they do split, maybe they can get Surge there. But apart from that, it's all the teams around you uncontested. You don't have insane options for Surge. And that Mountain team can become a problem if they set themselves up correctly to make it so it's hard to get out of Mass Meadows. And I don't know. I just have a bad feeling. I have a bad feeling that they're just going to die a couple of games. Maybe they win a game, and maybe this isn't a problem. But I don't know if they'll have the consistency to qualify through that.
That's a good shout. I haven't gone back and watched those games that they had. My gut instinct tells me that like in metas where you need to trade for Surge and like sit and like fish and get spare heals, my gut tells me Janice will figure it out. That's what my gut tells me.
But does Chap want to play like that? Is that a Chap or Noah's play style?
That's a good point, right? That's definitely a good point. Yeah, I have trust in Janice in this type of meta. Like, I feel like he should be able to cook up something where, like, you'd think he has a good understanding of like which positions they need to control in this area. Because like when I've watched like Vidil and them on the NA side of things, there's times when I'm watching them play from the spot and how they're playing for Surge, and I'm like, this is very. You can do this because of NA and the lobby around you.
That's a lot of Mass Meadow teams.
Right. And Janice, I think they can't play like that. Like you say, like they can't play like that. Otherwise, it's gonna like hurt them in this lobby. That's definitely a good shout. That's definitely a good shout to sort of keep a tail on. Yeah, let us know in the comment section below if you have who you think wins games, like who you think are the 5 game winners, who you think are the 5 consistencies for Group 2. Let's get into Group 3 though, because that's the big boy one. That's the one we all care about.
This is a spicy one.
Yeah, Group 3 is a spicy one. I think most people would probably agree it's the most stacked group of all the regions.
Yes.
And we will take a look now at the map, and bloody hell, it is crazy. We have genuinely like 15, 20 grand finals level teams, you'd say, probably. Like there is a lot of teams in here that if they were in grand finals, it would not surprise you. If we go through some of the big ones though, the heavy hitters, you have Vico, Veno, Flixie, Malibuka, Wox, Pings, not Pings, Ping, Mr. Savage, Mongrel, Panzer, Kami, Seti, Chari, Thomas, Trippin for Doxy. You've got Blaha, Mix, and Comeback, who have been doing really, really good this season. You have Fincheck, Cantry, and Up, who have had a massive spike in form. One thing that was funny that was pointed out to me is that you actually have like a bunch of trio FNCS winners in here. You have Hen, who's playing with Asa and Andy Z, obviously landing up to the mounts, but he's won an FNCS. You have Toos and Shamoki, who have both won FNCSs in the past in trios, right? Like in terms of just name value and quality and just the amount of teams in form, the amount of teams who are doing good, this is an insane group.
I mean, yeah, you've said it all already. There in EU, there's probably about 35 to 40 teams. If they qualify grand finals, you wouldn't be like, wow, how did they qualify, right? That's just that's just the quality we have in the region, maybe even less than that. And when you have 15 to 20 of them in one final, you're gonna get some high quality Fortnite, right? And yeah, I just think this is going to be so interesting. And there's so many different ways this could go with teams performing, teams underperforming. There's guaranteed to be an upset. There's too many good teams in this heat for certain good teams to not qualify. There's a lot of teams in this heat. If they were in other heats, they probably qualify for free, right? It's a very interesting dynamic. Unfortunate for a lot of the players, but for viewers, I mean, we're enjoying it. We're eating good.
Absolutely.
What are the main sort of like points you're looking at? Is it just looking at the top teams, looking how they're going to play, or is there different storylines before?
Let's start off with any Osborne things. Is there anything Osborne that you're intrigued by, and then we'll start talking about like the teams we want to see win, teams more consistency, some of the big names. But what are you looking at Osborne in this group?
So I talked about it already, right? So about eval and about box cards and pump power and how the dynamic works there, right? And it was actually Gentleman Polish's team, SnozQ and Dandir, who are dying out of the air every game. to Thomas Trippen and Fredoxy. Literally, it was just every single game, 1 to 2 of them would die every single game when they were contested, right? And I'm just sitting here like, are you still going to contest? Now, I know you have like an ego about contesting, right? But you've just played a finals and you've just gone through it where you're dying off spawn, not even to the fight, to someone else outside the POI. And then you're getting third partied and then you're not even getting to play the game, right? I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, they came 33rd in that finals, the Pump Power team.
That's crazy.
So it's like, you're just not even they came, 31st, sorry, my bad. But they're just not even getting to play. Yeah, my bad. But yeah, I think like you're looking at the Osborne dynamics. I think the teams that are happiest, or the team that was number 1 happiest, is probably Thomas Trippen and Fredoxy. I think you look at the way the lobby is, the amount of teams that are going to be in the top right area, the amount of surge they're going to be able to get early on into the game. I think they're really happy with the situations they're in. And there are some Osborne fights, for example, Dojo. I doubt they're going to con. They always do this where they claim the whole area, but they're actually just going to take the 2 splits, 1 team Dojo, 1 team the South Metal bit. And then there's some other ones, we can get into, but down the bottom right, it looks like there's a lot going on down the bottom right.
There is a lot going on, a lot of Osborne fighting going on here. I guess we'll go back to Kappa Kappa Factory and we'll go to some FNCS winners here, right? We have 3 FNCS wins on this team in total, in 2 Shimoki and Shura, and then we have Sanya. I'm saying these names wrong. I'm not too familiar with these lot. I don't know if you're very familiar with these underrated goats that I'm just like sleeping on. My expectation here is that you would expect one of these teams to sort of roll through the other. Like, I feel like anytime I've seen the Kappa Kappa Factory Osborne fight, there's always just the one team that just dominates it. And then, proceeds to do very, very well throughout the tournament. And it's a great spot if you can get the early surge, right? Like, if you get the early surge from the Osborne fight and you don't start getting third partied by somebody else, it's a lovely spot to play from.
Yeah, and I want you to so Shimoki, talking about that, 2 Shimoki and Shura have made the past 2 eval finals. They've been contesting them both. Can you let me know how many Osborns they've won in those 8 games?
So they've actually fought off-spawn against each other.
Not these guys. No, not these guys, but they just 2 Shimoki and Shura, they have been contested. I think it was by Pixie in 1, and it was by another team in another. How many times do you think they won off-spawn?
If it was against Pixie, I'm thinking not a lot, because I think those lot were good off-spawn. I'm gonna say they've won 2 times with 8.
They've won none. They have come 33rd in back-to-back eval finals, contested at Kappa Kappa.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Okay.
When you're looking at storylines, because whilst you were talking, I'm like, so I actually watched the Sanya God team, right? They land ref guard split. They landed there in play, and so I was like, it's weird they're contesting, right? It's a bit odd. Why would they contest? Now I look at the eval finals, I see 33rd and 33rd back-to-back from 2 Shimoki and Shura, and I'm
wow.
Maybe they know something, but. Yeah, on paper, as you said, 3 FNCS winners. Surely they're just going to win off spawn. But then you actually look at what's been happening this season.
They're not winning off spawn.
They haven't won off spawn.
Yeah. They are not winning off spawn. Okay, that's very interesting then. Because now I sort of look at it and you go, if you are ref guard, Della and Focus landing at that split, they were worried, I think, going into this of potentially being cons. Now they're not conned by that team. Like, this is just... they're gonna enjoy.
Yeah,
they have a meal of options around them.
They got starters, main, and dessert between the 3 POIs around them. Don't worry, they can pick 1 per game. Like
that is you'd expect them to no pressure, but you would expect them to do pretty well with that being the situation around them.
Yeah.
Do you see? With any of those Osborne fights, is there like a clear sort of direction you see for any of them, or you reckon it's up in the air? Because like for AD and Jakey and Michael, right, they're contesting now at Mars Meadows. They're a team that, like, given Uncon in set finals lobbies, they've shown they can come close to winning, right? In the eval this week, they came second on 2 occasions. Like, they're a team you could 100% see winning a game, but being contested again, as we've talked about, it gives you less chances to really get that win.
No, for sure. I mean, they were contested in that finals by reason. You know, one of the better teams actually in that eval finals. They got back-to-back seconds, so they can show when you get the Osborne and you win your Osbornes, they can show they can get good games from it. Play how they need to. But the thing is with Mass Meadows, it can go in one of two ways, and it's very easy. You have the 50-50 in the main building, which is like, okay, really nice. You have the 50-50, it's all chill, and it's just quick Osborne, no one can third party, right? Or you have someone gets a way worse drop, they have to land south side, and now you have a long fight in a flat open POI where there's the basement underneath and no one can die. It's like it's impossible to die. And what ends up happening is then you have teams come in because you're like, both teams need enough loot. You don't have enough loot from splitting what 40, 50, like 50, 60 chests, right? And teams are going to come in the third party. You know, you have the South Split, you have Della, you have these teams who are going to be looking to come in and get some kills, right? But I think if they can make it 50-50s, I do think AD and Jakey and Michael should have a good time. I think it should be a good finals for them. You know, I do have my biases, but I think it's.
You're always backing anyone from the UK now.
Yeah, of course, you got to. Yeah. But I think in general, like that should be a final spawn. The Osborne, I think, will be the worst in this whole bottom right area. Is the Hopeful Heights Osborne, because in the newest update they added they added a turtle, and the turtle got a little friend. You know, so there's a second turtle down at the bottom right now, and they both
turtle got a lover, mate.
Yeah, turtle pulled. You know, but but it basically on those turtles, it's two elemental chests, one god chest, the shrine spawns, so you have water sprites down there, barrels down there, like 10 guaranteed chests down there as well. It's like the better loot is actually at the turtle than at Hopeful Heights with like 25 chests, not all guaranteed. So it's like now it's going to be a weird spot that I think in set lobbies, if I'm pretty sure it's just going to end up being split. And I feel like when you end up having it being split, obviously that just leads to huge congestion in an area and teams running into each other in later fights. I feel like that is where the action is going to be happening later into like the first and second zone, right? Is those teams sort of just worst drop, swerve to down to the beach, take your loot down there, still get good enough loot that if they do want to fight, you can fight. But it's not like you're going to have to 50-50 over 20 chests at a POI.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay then. Let's get into some of the heavy hitters. I want to talk about Mongrel, Mr. Savage, and Panzer because this team has had a rocky season. They started off hot, things were looking good. They ended up being contested a bunch of the Bird, and the Bird lost its metal, and so they switched over to land at Shattered. They have some problems at Shattered, and now they've switched back to the Bird, and they're actually unconning this group. So even though the form has dipped, you know, they didn't even qualify for the last 2 weeks of divisional finals. You know, there's been rumors about, you know, the cohesion between the team and whether Mongo's going to stay. Should Panzer be IGLN? Should Mr. Savage be IGLN? Like, there's been so much going on for this team that hasn't necessarily been positive. But they're uncon in this lobby. And
first time ever, probably.
Yeah, and you would give them, you know, a big sort of shout or a big chance to probably qualify through this group, right?
Yeah, you would. I mean, if you're going off recent performances, apart from play-ins, they haven't really shown a lot, you know. When they've made finals, it hasn't been amazing, apart from the 1/10th place. And those finals have been few and far between. They haven't been making them consistently. But it's Mongrel and Savage and Panzer at Bird, which they showed at the start of the season they can win from. They can do well from. They were let's not forget. Start of the season, first two tournaments, Savage was the highest earner in this chapter. You know, he was the biggest earner. You know, he was winning games on EU and NA eval, right? So they clearly have the caliber of player to win a game, uncontested at Bird. With the metal half back, you know, it's not really back, you know, it's partly back.
They got more metal now, but it's not how it was before.
Yeah, they don't have 1 million metal. They have enough now, but yeah, I think in general, like this is the test for Mongrel, right? If you're someone like Mongrel and you're going into this finals uncon, you finally get uncon and you don't qualify, the questions might become a reality. You know, the worries you have about, or if I'm good enough, or if it's worth putting all this time and effort in. Those might become a reality if you cannot at least put in a really good showing with the situation they're in.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't want to add fuel to the fire, but I was watching Savage's stream the other day, and it was before a tournament, so he didn't have as many viewers in there. So maybe that's why this didn't get picked up a bit more. I say that, but he's got a couple thousand in there, right?
Yeah, barely any.
Yeah, he's playing 1v1s with Leo the Crack, and I think Leo the Crack at one point like asked him like if he's gonna do like a boot camp or something, and Savage was like, yeah, I'm gonna boot camp next season. Like, I'm actually so down. And someone asked like, oh yes, like you mongrel, and he was just sort of like, no, not mongrel, but like, I'm there. And it was like, and again it was just one of those things where it's like, like, so because you would think if they're gonna do a boot camp, then mongrel would go, right, because they're still playing with each other and everything. So it just added more of that like looming feeling of is mongrel really gonna be about? Regardless though, I actually like you. I still give them a good chance of getting through this group. Like you probably expect them to make it through. The interesting thing though is that they're gonna spend a lot of time for fighting against Malibuka, Wox, and Ping, who land night shift, because when you're the night shift team on certain zone pools, you're gonna go towards the south, right? And obviously there's an Osborne fight that they can get involved in, but Mr. Savage and them will probably want to get involved in that fight as well. So there's gonna, they're gonna spend some time during this tournament interacting with those guys. And Malibuka, Wox, and Ping have just been so impressive this season to me. I think they play night shift like really well. They've got a great read on how to play the spot. I think for Malibuka, it kind of reminds him of last year, Chapter 5, Season 1, playing fencing, in that like, on certain zone pools, like they're leaving fencing, going to get surged, but then they can just come back into fencing and like use all of the like flow berries, right, for spare shields. Whereas like night shift, you're not using flow berries, but you get so much loot that you have the spare shields, right? And like you see them do that a lot, where they're like pushing teams outwards and then coming back into night shift to replenish their loot. They have such a great plan that they will just make it to so many end games and they will just win a game.
I mean, they've had an insane, like, honestly, they've had an insane run this season, Malibuka, Ping, and Wox. It's weird because when you listen to them play, you wouldn't say the communication, obviously, two Russian speaking and Wox, obviously, that none of them are like English in their main language, but still communicating it. It's incredible to watch them play. But every finals they perform well. When they make a finals, it's top 10s consistently. It's getting deep into end games consistently. All the things you talked about, right? And they're going, for some reason, maybe because they're not winning cups, but they're going under the radar. Everyone's talking about, obviously, the Queasy Zero Ping. Malibuka's obviously also in Germany now. He's also on Zero Ping.
He's playing out of his mind right now, by the way.
He's playing crazy.
So good.
Yeah, they're playing crazy. And it's like, for some reason, no one's really talking about them to win FNCS.
They can win. They are a contender to win, 100%.
Obviously not easily, but they are easily in the conversation to win FNCS, right?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, like the way they play, obviously with all the barrels, there's like 40 barrels in the POI, so you can just come back and replenish all your health easily, or play storm, or do whatever you need to do. So yeah, I think when we're talking about Savages, that can be a worry, because obviously the one thing with night shift, you need metal, you need to go somewhere. Yeah. And number one most obvious spot to go is Bird. Now it's got his metal back, so they will run into each other a bunch.
Yeah, if a lot of it just depends on the pools. If they get lucky in the 5 games and it pulls a certain way, those guys are probably going north more than they're going south. But we'll see. Malibuka, I'm a big fan of. Of course, another team that's a big favorite: Cammy, Seti, and Chari. I know you were really high on this trio.
He wants it back.
I want it back. I know you're really high on this trio like a couple weeks ago, right? How do you stand on them now? Do you still feel like they are the second best team in the EU?
I mean, top 3 at least, I'd say for sure. I think it's top 3, top 4. I think it's EU is just so hard to say like a set one. I think, in my opinion, they're up there. They've shown enough for me to be excited. I think they've shown a lot of quality in the way they play. I think, especially them getting their metal back, it is interesting how they play. Watching them in eval, I don't know if they're doing it for safety, but the whole gas station thing of they triple loot Lost Lake and then they triple go to gas station to get the metal, which sometimes leaves them losing the Lost Lake position for Surge, right? But they still have options. You can go just south of Lost Lake. There's water nearby. You can fish from there. And You talked about with Janice, I agree that if there's a meta where you have to sit there and have spare heals and get surge and surge bases, is there a better team than historically than Cammy and Seti? I don't think there is in EU, right? I think this is center map at a POI, not some split. You know, they're at a good POI with good consistent loot, and they can just play consistently through it, which is what Cammy and Seti have always been about, with an insane fighter and fragger as Chari. I just don't see how it can really go wrong. Like, I'm not really, you know, when you, the only thing go wrong is obviously grand finals, when obviously how Akira does, but in this, purely in this group, no one contested around them. No one probably going to make some weird plays. Maybe Jake Buka, Twy, and all the Halo do, but apart from that, I can't see how it goes wrong in this meta for them.
No, absolutely. And in like the most Cammy Seti way possible, like their end games are phenomenal. Like if you want to learn how to play end game, like you 100% watch these guys because they've got, you know, a great read in that regard as well. So it's interesting. Do you think they win a game or more consistency?
They have they can win games. Now, do I think they'll win? They will win a game. I don't, because we watching them play play-ins or even the divisional weeks, like not so much in finals, but they also another team who like early height. They do like to play it when they can get it, when they get the right zone pools. You know, when you have a team as strong as them in the early mid game, you're going to see them try and access dead side in certain 50-50 zones. And when they do that and they get the right pool, their mats are so much higher than the rest of the lobby, then it's easy to play high. It's worth it at that point. So I could see them winning a game. With the pure like star power in this lobby, I just think they probably won't even risk going for height. I think they'll just play for the consistency.
It'll be that eye drop.
Yeah,
in group one.
Yeah, they might win through low ground, to be honest, with all the teams going through height. But I mean, there's just no need for them. When you're going to have such a consistent game, why risk getting a 14th randomly for getting griefed on height when you can just play, as you said, as structured and as clinical Fortnite as they do in the end game and just get your top fives and qualify that way?
Yeah. I vibe with that. All right, let's go a bit further up north then. Vico, Veno, Flixie.
Yep.
I mean, there's not really much to say here on them, to be honest. Like, we could sit here and talk about them, but like, there really isn't much to say. They're the team that's won the most games. I think they've won 11 games in set lobby finals. They're going to win a game in this. The question, I guess, is just early or late, really. Just do they win the first one? Probably.
Probably do just win the first one, to be honest. They probably get Island game one. They probably then just, after, as we've already talked about, they get the mats and they just play for height and just pure mechanical skill. They've shown it. They can take height early. They can take it in last moving. They can take it whenever they want. It's gonna happen. It's like a horror movie. You know the jump scare's gonna happen, but you don't know when. You know they're gonna be on height, but you don't know when it's gonna happen, right? And they're going to win a game. First two easily, but I don't know which one out of the first two, but for sure. If they don't win a game, I think that's even more shocking if they don't win a game than anything else.
Right. No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, this lobby is just so stacked, man. Like, there's so many other teams in here that I want to talk about. Like, Skyjump, Mumsy, Shakers, obviously, like, you know, they're going to be a big sort of influence if they qualify, and then now they're conning Queasy in the grand finals, then we start having question marks about a potential, you know, winning team, but they're con, so it's like a lot harder. Blaha, Mix, and Comeback have gone so under the radar in that they are really good from Shattered. They are a team that has won games this season. Like, I think they've won as many games as Cammy and Seti in them in set lobby finals. They've won like the third most. So honestly, I could see them winning a game. Fincheck, Kantri, and Apple have been on some crazy form. Like, their run has been nuts. So there's a lot of potential game winners here. I want to see your fantasy team though.
All right, let's get my fantasy team up.
What have you been doing for fantasy? For the people who don't know, shout out to We Clutch Up. They made a fantasy Fortnite game that is really, really fun. You basically pick your team. You have a budget of $50, and you have to like just pick, you know, who you think the 10 teams you think are going to get the most points. Taking a look at Harry's team here, then he's gone for an interesting strategy.
Yeah, gone for it. You know, it's EU, so the way with EU, and it always has been, is the middle. Like, when you think about the NA and EU difference, the tier 1 is always the same level, but when you think about EU, the tier 2 and the tier 3 is just so much more quality in it, right?
Right.
So when you think about
full screen and like zoom it in just so it's like easier to see, I guess.
There you go. Is that better?
Yeah.
There we go. Good. Right. Okay, so if we're going through all the teams, already talked about Ping, Wox, and Malabuka. We touched on them already. One of the best teams, as I said, could easily win F and CS. They're in the conversation at least. So in this group, I think they're a high chance to do well. Skyjump, Shakos, and Mumsy. You know, I think for the price of $6, you got to remember we only get $50 to pick 10 teams. Certain teams like Vino, Vico, and Flixie are $12. Camiseti and Chariot also $9. So you can't have all the teams. It's not possible to have all the best teams. Right. So you have to fill out all 10. So I think for value for Skyjump, Shakos, and Mumsy, I think uncontested Seaport City. You've seen in certain games how Seaport can play, how easy it is to get Surge, and I think that they will not struggle as much as, obviously, as we touched on, the contested teams might do now. They're uncontested. I think they've been clearly one of the better teams in the region this season. I'd be surprised if they dud it completely. Going through them all, Focus, Refsguard, and Della, we touched on it. You have the pick of your Surge. Wherever you want to go, you get your Surge. I mean, I think it should be easy. And you said about them a second ago, Combat, Blatcher, and Mixem. I think Shatter's insanely underrated because on NA, it's seen as like a top landing spot. You have one of the best teams in the region landing there, right? Yeah. And on EU, it's Combat, Blatcher, and Mixem, who aren't, I'm not going to say are a bad team, but they're nowhere near the level of, Rise, Muzz, and Yapko, who are landing there on NA, right? It's nowhere near the same, but they could easily have a good performance from there. And then Snazy, Voxy, and Ice, again, another solid team that they've won games. They've won a lot of games. They are a team who's made a lot of finals this season, have the experience. And Magic Mosses, I still think, is just a good spot to play through. I don't think it's one of those spots you're going to struggle with Surge too much from, especially with contested pump power and how that's going to play out. I wouldn't be surprised too much. And then we're going to get into the lower prices, and it's trying to find the value. Trying to find the value in these picks. It's not an easy thing. There's certain situations, but I feel like I've got some good picks. Artist, Cryfalse, and Ifrozy. I talked about Hopeful Heights and how it might be Grief. I'm just thinking they will be the ones that will hopefully come up on top. Cryfalse, a guy who made the last grand finals in Chapter 5, right? He's got the experience. I'm pretty sure he won a game either to qualify or it's to get in the grand finals. I just remember him being on height.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I remember him being on height down like in a south zone last map. And if they have the tendency to win games, and they do, I wouldn't be surprised to see them have, out of the few games they get to end game, them being powerful games and griefing for height. And all you need is one game in this format, right? Zabi, Yasin, and Siren landing on the mountain split to the west of Mass Meadows. Contested, yes, but from the team they're contested by, they should be easily winning. They're contested by a team who I don't think's ever made a finals from looking at them. I don't think, I'm not going to disrespect them too much, but if you're just going player for player, they should be
right. Makes sense.
They should be winning off spawn. And then going through the rest, we've got Voltiax, Cool, and Hizix landing Dojo. It looks contested, but as we talked about, don't think it's really going to be contested. And if you're getting an Uncon Dojo team for $3, I think that's insane value.
Yeah.
And then Pixel, Loxtail, and Frix, I think. Frix, yeah. I think that South split, actually a lot more underrated than people think. It looks bad to play. If you're efficient at the off spawn, it should be fine. Obviously, I'm not going to say they're in a chance to win anything, win the whole thing, but from consistency, if they get some good zones or with the options around them, if the mountains don't fight, like if the fights around the mountain split or if the Mass Meadows becomes Grief, there's options for them to get Surge. And the fast one is, so it doesn't say here, but it's Relays, it's Wed1, and it's Poloshka, I think. I'm pretty sure that is who they are. So, and it's Shogun. Another good team, Shogun uncontested. I think consistency and mobility from Shogun's really nice. And yes, Surge is definitely a hard thing from Shogun, but it's shown to have been able to do well from there. Edgy has made multiple top 10s from Shogun in NA. So and I know they're not the same level as a team like Edgy, but if a team like Edgy can make top 10s, it's clearly not a completely dud spot. It's a spot you can still make good performances from. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them making multiple end games. Okay, that's the full fancy. And well, what's sticking out to you at the moment? What are you thinking?
We have a lot. Like the way we've built our teams is very, very similar. Like
okay.
Very, very similar. We got some different ones, but like I think in terms of the distribution of how we've spent our money, it's like the same. which is funny. So like the big thing initially. So guys, by the way, if you want to play this as well, you guys can. We're gonna start an Fantasia League. So if you look in the comment section, or not in the comment section, if you look in the description below, there will be details on how you can play, join our league, and try and beat other Fantasia viewers and listeners if you want to get involved. But if I get my team now, right, my team is very, very similar. So this is my team. I also went with Ping Malabuka because for $9, like, so the thing is, so for people who have played fantasy, let's say you play like fantasy football, right, with like the Premier League one, this feels for us right now, this is like the people who like are like, well, we're not going to take Haaland, right? You know, like I'm not going to take Haaland because it's too expensive and I can get better value across the rest of my team. That's basically what's happened there, because they made Venno like $13 or something.
Yeah, it's
like
$12. They made them, like, it's too much.
They made them $12. Like it's just too. If you pick them, you basically like are handicapping the rest of your team, even though like they are guaranteed to get you 1K points because they're gonna win a game. It's like you can get, like, you want to try and get more potential game winners, right, in your team, essentially. Is the reason why both of us don't have Venno, because I'm sure there'll be people watching this like, why would you not pick Venno for fantasy? Like, hello. But again, you have a budget and it's like a pretty strict budget, so we couldn't like we couldn't take everyone I wanted. Like if I could have picked who I wanted, I would have taken Venno, Cammy, and Ping and Malabuka, right? Like, of course, like, but you literally just can't do that.
That's how I started mine. I didn't realize you could only have 10, so I picked the top 3. I was like, I've got 7 out of 10 teams. That's all I need. And I went to click. It's like, wait, you need 10. I was like, fuck, wait a second. My whole team's ruined now.
Yeah, you need 10 people, so it's not that easy. But yeah, I think the main differences for me is I went with Kanchi, Finchik, and Apple just because they've just been playing so well. They've not won games in set lobby finals, but they've won so many games outside of it. Like they're one of the most winningest teams, I think, in the past couple of weeks outside of it. And like there's a world where like even if you're worried about like Venno and them being like right next to them, like there's a world where those guys win a game and they don't have to worry about them at all. Like I feel like these guys are just a really like on the rise type of team. Shout out to Boop. Boop was calling his underrated pick to win a game in this group is Moneymaker, and I can just see that as well. I don't know why. I just see them just winning a random offshoot game. Similar thing with what you were saying about Snazy and them, right? Like uncontested, a really good spot in Mosses. Like it's just not a bad spot to be in. You know, in terms of value in the market, this one stood out for me. This is one of the first teams I picked just because $3 for these guys, like eventually they're going to win this game of Spawn at Dojo, and then you just are playing a game of Dojo with early Surge. Like, you know, that's the team I could definitely see winning the game. I feel like I've got a good amount of teams here I could see winning a game. But yeah.
We have built it the same way. We did one. We literally had $1 $9, $4 $6, $2 $4, and $3 $3. We built it the exact same way. Yeah. We built our teams the same. But yeah, you guys don't have to build the same team as us. Like we can. So like there are like different players up for grabs, right? So like I'll show you here, right? Venno and them were $12, which is why like it's just too expensive to take them. Like, you kind of can't take them. I'm sure there'll be people who want to take Mongrel, but I don't know. For me, it felt like Mongrel at $7 is a bit too expensive. I had Mongrel in at the start. So before I think it was Snazy and Combeck in, I had Mongrel and I think I had Twy. And then I thought about it. I was like, Mongrel's there's a chance for him to win, but I'm not as confident in Twy in comparison to, you know, the other teams that I could put in, right? And it was like $7 is a weird amount that I felt was really hard to like balance my team around, because I either had to put a $4 down to a $3 or a $6 down to a $5. And it's like, is Mongrel that much more likely than a Snazy to win a game? I don't know. Right. Yeah, no, it's a tough one. There's some decent people here you can maybe take. Like your Mumsy pick is one like I can vibe with. Like I could see myself swapping out one of my $6 maybe for something like that as well. But yeah, you guys, can copy my whole team. I mean, somebody watching this will copy your whole team, and then you know they're gonna get angry at you when you know, like the FPL people. Like you ever watch like them FPL YouTubers, and you copy the FPL YouTubers team, and then the team duds, and you're like, come on, man, you're supposed to be an
FPL insiders.
Come on, man. Where the
Yeah.
FPL insiders? Yeah, no, Harry, this has been really fun. This has been really fun.
Good.
I'm really looking forward to this weekend. Let us know your fantasy teams. We're gonna have a league for you to join once again for Group 2 and Group 3. So there'll be a league for you to join for both those groups. And you can play against us and the rest of the Fantasia boys if we get them involved. But we'll keep doing fantasy because I feel like it's going to be really fun to do that for grand finals for
sick.
sure. But yeah, no, it's been fun, man. I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Let's get some good games. Let's get some surprises in it. Let's get some good games.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see you guys very short. We'll see you next week on the podcast.
Yeah, see you next week.
Yeah.
Peace
Enjoy.
out.
Peace out, guys. Take care.